This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, yes. Here's the pen. It was wonderful, very relaxing, nice. A lot of fun things. So, Saturday. And then, we left on Friday morning. Finance. Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. It was.
You drove it?
Had to take the car up there because it had a Canadian recall on it. And we couldn't import it without doing that in. Keep stupid. But anyway, yeah.
Ed?
I'm not here.
We might shut that door, because I'm getting a lot of feedback from right there. We'll leave this one open.
Well,
So the I hope so. Well, but I can't do some work. I don't know. Supposed to be.
anybody else need to sign? Jared?
I will sign in.
How were the kids today after being off for a week?
Unfortunately, we made it right over there, they were right at the door. Yeah, everybody. Just sit over there. All hooked up? Yeah. Okay, we're gonna call the special meeting of the finance committee to order. Sorry, we're running 5 minutes late. We had a little technical problem we had to work on. And we're going to review our fourth quarter books, which will bring everything up to 9:30, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the clerk will note the finance committee members present, although we're gonna lose at least one and two other city councilors across the hall shortly. So who wants to dive in first? We've got the roll call done. I guess I need a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Good.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any objections to approval of the agenda? Hearing none, passes 4-0. And now we're to the first quarter, FY23 first quarter financial report.
So you all got in your packet the actual financial statement for all of the funds for the city of Roswell. I handed out also earlier a summary, which will summarize, the highlights of all of this for you and give you some ideas on how better to look at this to make it more understandable. The balance sheet and the income statements for all city funds are here. If you take a quick look at a balance sheet, if you go down some, not so far back up, that one right there. If you look at any balance sheet, it's going to tell you what revenue is, and then it's going to tell you what the expenditures are for that. So that's a quick look, and it'll show you whether you're a plus or minus for each fund. I know when you get to looking at these with all the accounts that we have, it can sometimes be a little overwhelming because they go on and on and on. But this is a quick recap. So what I did was pretty much summarize based on this where each fund is at, and that's what's in your report that I had handed out. The income statements or actuals for the first quarter fiscal year. If you go down one more. And these are sideways. Thank you. So this is the first quarter of 21, first quarter of 22, then June or July, August, and September for fiscal year 23, our 23-year budget, and what's available and the percent used or collected for revenue. So you would want to see your revenue to be at 25% because we're a quarter in, and you want your expenses to be 25% or less, so you're not in the hole. And so that's just sort of a quick review of what you're looking at. For Tyler, transfers are a part of revenue. So whether it's a transfer in or a transfer out, it is part of revenue. So don't let those confuse you when you get to the bottom and you see in the revenue section, keep going down a little more. All of those right there. Go back up some. All of these are the transfers section. And of course, most of the transfers from general fund are going out. So in brackets, it's going out. And if it's not in brackets, then it's coming in. General funds net income for the first quarter. Go all the way down to the bottom of that statement. What the page number is? This will be the biggest one because it's got all the departments in it.
I'm just glad you can read those numbers.
Well, and it's a little bit overwhelming, so that's why I summarized for you right there. So it shows the net income is $259,000 for general fund for the first quarter. The total revenues at 28.31%. Total expenses is at 23.38. The GRT is up, and we talked about that in some of the finance meetings, that were up $2.8 million. That's not all in general fund, and that's what you have to keep in mind, is it's an increase in roads, recreation, sanitation, landfill. So for general fund, it's up 4.18%, which is $1,156,699.98. So that's going to be additional revenue from what we have budgeted that we're going to have available to spend. We posted the transfer in from the ARPA money for the zoo and the cemetery, which were out of general fund last year. We transferred out to the museum and golf, which needed the transfer for the 70-30 split, and we only transferred enough to get them to zero, their cash balance to zero. And we have to do that quarterly because we have to submit a report to DFA, and we can't have negative cash. So we always, any fund that ends in the negative, we've got to transfer it to DFA with our DFA report. We didn't have to do a transfer for the zoo, not because they didn't need it, but because we had put the ARPA money in there and they had not spent it yet. So they weren't at a negative cash balance. So I went in, and when we get back over here and I talk about the zoo, I take that out of the equation and tell you what we're looking at for the 70-30 split for them. Outstanding POs for the general fund is $1,241,439.14. So obviously, we don't have enough cash on hand to cover our outstanding POs there. Departments in the general fund, because there's so many of them that are short, they're short $1 million estimated, because I projected this out for the whole year. So estimated, I'm looking at $1,239,524.34 short. And city clerk, is it going to be about 31,800 short? That's going to be for the city clerk and the overtime. Municipal court's looking at being about $18,000 short. HR is about 8,000 short. Fleet maintenance is about 4,000 short. Police is looking at 367,500 short. Code enforcement's about 8,900 short. Animal control about 195,000. And I added, based on the 350,000, I added 175,000 for the additional staff. So that's where the 195 comes from. Parks is looking at about 248,000 and IT 351,000. If you go down farther, the library, all of these, so the library grant fund, law enforcement protection, HIDA, the ambulance, the fire, hazmat, fire protection, and JAG grants, they're all grants. So they can spend, and we gave budget authority to spend all of their grant money. So those, you know, they look okay. Some of them we got the full grant in, but they haven't spent it all. But those, they monitor very closely. So I didn't go into great detail on those.
Jane, just, you said that projected to be short 1.2 million, go back to that. That's an annual. Thank you.
Well, and it's based on one quarter, so who knows where we're going.
Right.
So that's my
Say for
best
one
guess.
quarter, you would need one.
The ARPA funds, we finally received the last $5.8 million in September. The air scrubbers for the library were not encumbered until October. So the balance is actually $7,385,462.27. Lost revenue, which council will be able to spend on whatever they want, is going to be $7.1 million. We still have $254,999.27 left that has to be spent on something as a qualified category for ARPA. And we have until December of 26 to do that. Any questions?
When you said like the police department is 367 over, that's over budget, so they're running at about $1.4 million over budget for the whole year?
No.
Or this is a projection, what they are for the whole
year.
Based on the first quarter.
based on the first quarter, that they did that already, some three or four.
Yeah.
So these are conservative numbers,
Yeah,
more than
probably,
likely.
because your first quarter, you're just getting going, so.
But we're not talking, I mean, we don't have fully staffed yet. We're getting close, but we also we put the money in there to be fully staffed.
Yeah, they are fully staffed and they've since
94.
ordered the automobiles. Tell me that I'm right, Mike.
Yeah,
They
it's
ordered the
on,
automobiles and they've got the,
it's on our agenda for a meeting next week.
Right, but my question though is that they weren't fully staffed for this whole quarter, and we funded it for the full year, correct? We funded all those extra positions for a full year, and they didn't spend, they hired in, and that's still taken into account.
So that tells me that they're spending more in other categories than they are on
Well-
wages. So that's what that's telling me.
yeah.
You go back and look at their line item by line item, it's see where,
And see how much OT.
whatever the variance is.
and-
And it's easy to pick off, you just gotta go through the budget, anything over a quarter as you go.
Well, and the new hires, I don't know what we,
Basically, we may be on paper staff with the numbers, but it may be 8 months to 12 months before those officers are actually finding themselves on the street making a difference.
So that's why we need to back up. We got there on a basis, see where we're over. We know it's on pages.
We usually budget.
well, and we did based on last year's budget. With the increase, and we tried to build the increase in, so the COLA and the step increase were added into the overtime also to increase that. But you're talking, 367,000 out of an $11 million budget. It's not,
But going back to the actual GRT, at 1.1 million is actual quarter. And this is year, so if it continues at, then we're not in as big a trouble as it looks.
capital improvement fund is looking at net income of $1,003,681.14. Total revenue sitting at 26.8. Total expenses are at only 4.4. The GRT for capital improvement is up 6.65%, which is about 188,562.44
Quarter.
for the quarter. Outstanding open POs are at $2.1 million. We're at cemetery. One more. So cemetery's net loss for the first quarter is 91,370.61. Total revenues at 14.79 and total expenses are at 11.02. The outstanding POs are 42,567.54.
Is that mostly that veterans facility?
I think if you look at it, can you flip that one? No. That one. I think most of the charges for lots, and what is the other one? Those two are under the cemeteries under budget right now for what it's collecting. So I don't think it has anything to do with the veterans.
We do have an outstanding capital outlay from them. I think we lose it in June 24. The capital outlay for the cemetery.
24? 23, this, next one, July, June of next year.
June of this year. We have between now and June to encumber.
The veterans.
It was with $500,000. I know there's been some of it, but I know that we
You
don't.
know the balance of that?
Yeah, it's actually down for about 400. Probably about 400. Yeah, that's sent back to for redesign.
That's correct, and that's a project that everybody worked on.
What we have built and we're waiting on the state to approve all of the architect. The total build time for that project is 45 days. So we're going to get it up to the state before we issue a notice of obligation. And they bless it. We'll come back, go to council, issue it, get it, and built, and cover the funds, and then the build time, like I said. Now, contract actually states we need to build it.
Will we have any extra money that we use in streets or something? I would just guess.
It has to be on the actual resident.
It has to be, they have to use it within the price. So
Mr. Chairman, it would probably be a good thing to have. Been quite a while since the cemetery board has reviewed opening and closing costs and those kind of things. I know that we are severely under what a lot of places are. I own a lot of lots back home, and I had a cousin that just died, so I gave one. And went to look at the opening and closing. The opening and closing was almost $2,000. Just open and close the grave. What are we sitting at right now, Mike? 600, 500? But we have not addressed that in a long time. Not saying we need to just go up to that, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at.
And I think a lot of things we have reviewed pricing. Needs to be reviewed.
And I don't know where we are with the columbariums, but we need to start looking at what we can charge per niche, opening and closing of those niches. I mean, right now at this cemetery, very few cemeteries that I'm used to using that are perpetual. Now, non-perpetual cemeteries don't, but most perpetual cemeteries are going to require some kind of out of burial container. And we do require that at the General McBride because it actually saves us money in the long run on taking care of the land because the graves don't cave in. But we don't require that in the regular cemetery, and that's a lot of man hours having to take. So I think there's some things that we ought to ask our cemetery board to be actually looking
Are they deep enough to double stack them?
Well, we have the equipment to double stack, but as of right now, we don't have that within the cemetery book of regulations, whatever that's called, that we allow double stacking in the regular cemetery. We do allow it at Pride, but not in the regular. I don't believe that that could be something that we could entertain as well. But I know that opening and closing and probably out of burial container is something that I highly suggest we be considering because you can see what we're putting into that cemetery, and it's supposed to be a perpetual cemetery. And we're spending a significant amount of money there. Those are just some thoughts.
Well, I know on some groups, you can't use concrete for burial vaults, you have to use something other than that for religious reasons, just fairly can't leave. Fiberglass is okay. You can't use.
Fiberglass is actually a better outer burial container than concrete. Concrete absorbs moisture and doesn't last very long, but the fiberglass is very good and less expensive for the consumer as well. I'm not looking to rip someone off. I want it's less expensive. It's probably the best vault out there.
Well, if we bought them and
We actually do have them out there, Mr. Mayor, that are available so that if someone from the using the McBride Cemetery doesn't choose to buy a traditional vault from the funeral home, they do have the choice. I think we still have them out at the cemetery. But I think that's something maybe the cemetery board needs to take out.
if I look at them in volume.
I mean, it just looks like $90,000, but that's 1/4. That can pop up to $500,000 really fast.
I'm not made them pop up.
I got it. Dad got it.
I refuse to.
Okay, moving on.
I used to need them. I've been out there with things saying 6 months.
An outer burial container would help.
Transit's looking at a loss of 17,565.81. Revenues at 10.24%. Expenses are at 12.40. Federal grants are down 6.1% for the first quarter. And I think part of that is because the Fed's fiscal year is October 1. So they were just ending, so I would expect that to be low our first quarter. outstanding POs are 730,000. Museum, is one of the 70-30 splits. The net loss is $2,000.34. Revenues at 24.05. Expenses are at 24.33. We did do transfer from general fund to cover the cost of 241,683.91, which is 63.67% of the total budgeted transfer for them. Outstanding POs are 62,025.91. I went back and took out I averaged the transfer. I took out the transfers and averaged the revenue and their expenses and come up with an estimate for the shortfall of $1,083,695.69. They're averaging about $90,307.97 deficit per month.
That's on the second. And we're budgeted.
The revenue is budgeted, the transfer is not, so it is not part of general fund.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zoo is another one of the 70-30s. The first quarter, they were at a net loss of 247,015.69. Revenues at 1.98%. Expenses are at 12.46%. We didn't have to do the transfer because of the ARPA money that was sitting out there. They have outstanding purchase orders of 242,000. I did the same thing with them. I took their revenue and annualized it, took their expenses and annualized that. So I'm looking at a shortfall of $1,110,372.77 for them, which is about $92,531.06 deficit per month.
Can I ask you a question? Well, I need to go back just on the museum. When you're looking about their cost, I mean, they have some labor and stuff, but how much of this budget is there for acquisition, storage and protection insurance and all that? I mean, you know, it's one thing if they're comparing people there, they're willing to cost, but I would imagine our acquisition and storage is very high as far as a percent of the budget. Maybe
When they pay the insurance premium, they spread it out over the 4 quarters or if they pay.
Yeah, I don't think the insurance is that much for them. General liability insurance is, I think, 24,833 is all.
That's a liability, that's not the coverage of.
That's all it's.
Can I ask a question? Maybe not be appropriate, but do we know what the value of all the art is in these and what it's insured for?
Yes. And I can't right offhand tell you what it is, 36 million.
Well, I just was curious.
Yeah. But that's what that insurance is supposed to cover because it is not done by New Mexico Self-Insures. It's an outside entity that we have to contract with. And I believe Caroline reviewed it and picked it for the.
Well, that would make sense that, I mean, it may list as general liability, but for our liability as far as building, someone falling, that would fall under municipal or self-insured.
Yeah.
This would be.
And it's under building. Under insurance building. So I don't think it's that much. I think the majority probably of any of these are going to be payroll expenses and all of the benefits associated with.
These insurance costs, I don't know, this is before the numbers were put on the pages, but you've got insurance, building equipment, and general liability. Well, apparently, if I'm reading this right, first quarter, we paid the liability,
The insurance building.
no, the insurance building is 24.8,
Yeah.
building's 24.1. Third line down.
That's for fiscal year 22. Yeah, that's for last year, what general liability was. The only thing we paid this year in insurance is the building for the 24,000.
So when the rest of these payments going to be due?
The New Mexico self-insures was probably paid in October. So we ought to see those come through in October. And I think total citywide, we're talking about almost $2 million, $1,990,000, I think.
So we'll see that when we do.
Yeah.
Good enough.
Well, in general, liability is gonna be way up, that way, our the buildings we have, since our rates through the roof.
Well, and we've already had New Mexico self-insurers tell us that our vehicle insurance is going to probably double, and so is the building liability, because the hail damage is going to come through on the next set of bills. So we'll have to plan for that next year.
So we're looking at figures.
$4 million.
I like you short of mill, but that's just me thinking.
Wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, 2 million here and 3 million there. I mean, it gets there. And we know that these bills are out there. We just haven't been presented the bills yet.
Well, and we budgeted exactly what they billed us. So the numbers ought to be accurate.
So the number is going to increase from
For our next fiscal year.
double. Big lot of cash. Okay. I've got a grasp on that part. The rest of it, I'm still working.
Golf fund has net income of $1,016.18. Total revenues at 27.97%. Total expenses are at 27.89%. The first quarter transfer to cover it was $123,816.64, which is 31% of the total budgeted transfer. It wasn't until we got into this fiscal year that we found out that golf's budget isn't a complete budget. The payroll portion is the only part of the budget that was annualized. All of the other portions of it were not annualized. So I'm thinking probably in January, Jim will come back for a budget adjustment. I think the biggest part of that adjustment is going to be the items that he wants to buy to sell in the store, in the golf store. So we'll be making money back. So I'm hoping it won't be that big of an impact. But we are looking at a budget adjustment for them. The 70-30 split right now, and I used the actual number, so I left budget off when doing this portion of it. So using the actual revenue that they produced and expenditure so far, we're looking at a $570,156.48 deficit for the 70-30 split, which is about $47,500 deficit per month. That does not take into account the $300,000 that he has spent on golf carts. We got an email the other day and they're anticipating hopefully that those will be delivered in June of 2023. If they are, they're going to hit this budget. If we don't get them in June, then it'll be part of next year's budget.
So we're going to own these golf carts, or we're going to?
We are gonna
We're not
own these,
leasing.
no, we're gonna own these golf carts,
Okay,
brand new golf carts, so.
I hope the gas, not electric. Because you can't ever get ahead of changing out the kind of thinking batteries. Instead of the old plant, battery plant. Okay.
So on, because the 70-30 splits are three together, when you add those up in the shortfall. And the shortfall that I projected, we're looking at, $3,055,224.94 for the museum, zoo and golf. I went ahead and added the same, on for recreation because they would be a 50-50 split, when all of that was originally done. So total revenue, they're at 323,334.31 loss. Revenues at 14.04, expenses are at 15.98. GRT is down from them in this fund, 11.7%, and part of that, it's 199,000. Part of that is because we changed this year. Instead of doing the GRT as a transfer, bringing it all into general fund and transferring it out, we took it directly as revenue. And because we were covering the debt service, it's going to affect how GRT looks this year for recreation because it's revenue coming in versus a transfer. And what had happened in the past was the debt service isn't due until August. So the money would be in recreation and look like revenue for recreation of an extra $1 million. And then the first part of July, we had to pay that debt service. So then we took it out then. This is going to be a truer picture.
Like this is what. So you'll see the real revenue.
Right. Yeah.
That's good.
So, but when you look at these reports and you wonder why it looks like GRT is down for them, that is why. It's because the shift in a transfer versus the actual revenue is covering the debt service first.
Comparing your FY 22 to 23, you kind of look at it and just, what? But now, you know,
They have open POs of 455,120.28. The estimated shortfall for them, although they're sitting at 323, I think they're going to get part of that back, and part of that is the change in the GRT. But I'm looking at an annualized debt of 572,651.45, about 47,720 deficit per month. So when you add that to the 70-30 split, you're looking at $3.6 million. It's not in the budget.
Right.
The next one is the, where do you want to move it down on? My board. You know. Keep going. I'm gonna go to the debt service. Right there. So this is the 2017 Recreation Bond Debt Project Fund. And it shows that we have $3,500 left of the bond sitting in a Pioneer account. The net, go down a little, the net loss. Oh, no, not on that one. Go back up. You can see the balance sheet. Okay. I don't know that there's much activity on that anymore. And I don't know really what we're going to do with the $3,500. But we need to probably clean that up. Go down to the next one, that one. This is the debt service payment. And like I said, we had to make the payment. So we're looking at $504,000 loss between the revenue summary account and the expense account. Total revenues at 1.74, total expenses at 9.69, or wrong one. 38.48 is revenue, 77.5 is the expense, because we paid that. The only other payment that will be made will be the interest payment in February. So as we keep putting money in there, the GRT in there, then that's going to even out. The next one is the corrections fund. Revenue is at 1.74 and expenses are at 9.69. They've got 97,824.26 outstanding in open POs. The convention center bed fees.
What POs do we have out in the correction fee? What are they for?
I'm gonna say it's an open purchase order to pay Chavis County Detention Center. Our monthly bills over there.
We do that on a PO instead of a monthly bill from them?
Well, we get a monthly bill from them, but they would open a purchase order for
Okay,
200,000 and then just pay it down.
I understand, but seems like, you know, when I'm looking at open POs of 20 million plus,
We haven't got there yet.
well, but I am, I mean, you know, I'm trying to get ahead of this a little bit, believe it or not. But whenever I look at that, and then I look at this PO for $250, what it is, but I mean, it seems to me like we could take care of part of a PO if we change the way we go about it.
Well, but to make sure that we don't have a permit violation, I would want them to do an open purchase order.
So
My issue with the open POs are the ones that we carry over year to year to year. This, I think, is appropriate because if he opens the purchase order for the full year, and come May and June, he trues it up.
it makes it where you, oh, you got. I understand. Go ahead. I'm just thinking out loud.
The convention center bed fees is looking at 200, where am I at? 294,224.32 loss. Total revenues at 27.23, total debts at 88.81, outstanding POs are 201,708.95. I believe that, I thought Juanita was in here.
She's watching.
Was the witnessing that
Museum,
county
City Hall, museum.
At the convention center. They're using the bed fee. You all approved the bed fee for the fence at the convention center. So I think that's what that is. Otherwise, we don't see much movement in that.
And I think that is.
Yeah. Lodgers tax is looking at net income of 129,172.61. It incorporates lodgers tax, the lodgers tax for police overtime, fire overtime, convention center, visitor center, 40%, public affairs, 40% for certain employees. Total revenue is at 29.09%, expenses are at 11.52. Outstanding purchase orders of 488,140.35. The road fund has a net loss of 2,400,000. Revenues at 10.06. Expenses are at 24.43. GRT is up 6.65%, which is 188,562.44. And their outstanding purchase orders are 3.3 million. Unemployment liability is looking at $66,000. Total revenues at 100% because that will be part of the insurance we pay out. Total expenses are sitting at 32.71%. Transfers were made in July from all participating funds, and claims are paid quarterly. The next one is the Economic Development Fund. There's no activity really this year. The recipients are Main Street Roswell, 60,000, Hispano Chamber, 50,000, and EDC, 200,000. So we've got 237,500 in open POs, but we haven't received an invoice from EDC that I know of. So we've not paid anything on it. The next section is all restricted donations. And those are not budgeted. So what we budgeted were just the carryover amounts from last year. Any donations that have been received from July through December, we'll do a budget adjustment in January or February and give them authority to spend that money. The next one is the 2008 GEO Bond Debt Service Fund. The final payment was made. That's going to be long. One more. That's the, so we have no cash in that. Our final payment was made in July. And the second interest payment will be made in January. And then it'll go, the whole fund will go away because of what it's named, but that'll clear that one. The next one's the 2015.
So the bonds will be paid off and the income disappears.
Yes.
Because it's a GO bond. So talk to me quickly about the mechanics of how we certify that the bonds are paid off. Does that go to DFA? And then they're responsible for getting it out to the county treasurer so they can take it off?
And we did that when we did budget. We filled out a form for them. And because we had not elected to renew it, we're going a full year at least with no GEO bond.
Okay. So the property taxpayers are going to get a little help.
Right.
I wonder how many of them will notice that when they pay their taxes.
None.
Well, I will.
My question is, you said we were interest payment, but if we paid the last payment, why is there still an outstanding interest?
Yeah.
And if there's zero in the fund, where would we get the money for the interest?
I think it's,
I mean, it's probably not negligible.
yeah, I think
Much,
it's, maybe go back up a little bit. I think the payment's going to be, the interest is it's going to be another $7,900.
The expense interest right there at the bottom of the sheet.
But if the fund, the balance is zero in there, we're gonna have to pull from somewhere with some.
Well, and I'm not sure how the property tax, how that works. If we're still getting property tax, because it's paid.
I didn't look at the property tax assessment to see if there was a city GO on there or not.
It should be on this year's property tax. We haven't received it.
Yeah, I think they break it out.
Because we get, does the county pay us annually or twice a year? There's a lot, but I can't remember what the law says, but the county pays ad valorem taxes to us, school districts, whoever's recipients at specific times during the year. They're pretty good sized checks if you get enough tax. And I don't know what those, I don't know if it's twice a year or once a year. It's not on a quarterly basis.
Yeah, I don't,
Probably try to do their semi-annual payments.
Probably is.
You know, I mean, you pay your taxes.
That would sure help manage the bond payment cycle that you got. Okay.
yeah. Now we start, the enterprise funds. The Air Center, shows net income of $376,696. Total revenues at 5.8 and total expenses are at 3.18. Outstanding POs are $3.2 million.
Okay, we've got a question.
Okay, so it's not showing in this order.
Well, it'll show it mid-year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
People paying attention.
That's what it is.
Okay, back to the air service.
We collected 2.23 of the federal grants, no state grant budgets, and 26.72% of the operational revenue. We've not done any transfers associated with the indirect cost allocation or the Ascent project.
Do you have a idea if you would have done the indirect cost allocation with
Yeah.
Because it's a real number, it's got to be addressed something. But it has to be. It was sitting with $6.8 million out there.
Air Center. Indirect costs for the year would have been $1,550,000.
So that's 375 a quarter,
Yeah.
something like that. So this would have been,
Yeah, so they wouldn't have had any revenue at all.
it would have been zero. We charged them for that. Let me ask you another question. If you screw up, phase 103. That's 6,855,000. Is that their fund balance?
That's their cash.
Their cash fund balance is what they have. So, and it decreased by 322,000. And would have decreased by another 375,000 had we charged them. So they're sitting at 6.8 minus 3, so they're 6.5 approximately. Just a number for everybody to remember. Because we've got to talk about at some point in time funding for Ascent. So.
So the skinny of the 6.5.
We're 6.5 right now.
Yeah.
It's going to go even more
Oh, I
to the
understand.
downside, based upon our first quarter.
Right, and 5 million ain't gonna cover it.
So just
Okay,
caution. It's all. Just
I'm
caution.
with you.
Well, and Juan and I talked about how little the federal grants and the state grant reimbursement was. And so he had asked the Air Center to tell us in expenditures of $866,000, what were they expecting to be reimbursed?
Yeah.
So on the first quarter, it was only $32,496. The second quarter, we're looking at $403,029.77 based on what was out there when this was run.
And we're just looking at the cap.
Yeah.
Right.
Non-reimbursable is 381,801.69, and then our portion of the reimbursable amount is another 34,317. So in our second quarter, we're going to see an increase in the grant money coming in of more than $400,000.
Which we've already expended, we want to use those expenses, so
Yeah.
we get that back.
Right.
So offset what I'd really like to see is where do we think that this fund will be at the end of the year, knowing what we know today.
Less the indirect costs and less assent. And I didn't go there because there's too many ifs and, do I add those in? Do I not add those in? If we don't do the indirect costs, we're going to be hurt in the general fund because that's part of the
I think you
budget.
should put the general fund. What I want to see is where this fund's going to be with what you know today, where you think it's going to look like at the end of the fiscal year, with all the indirect costs put in. Because if we don't put them in, the general fund's going to take a hit. So we need to know where we think this is going to be. Is what we need to know. And you just make your assumptions, so that, just tell us what your assumptions are. You don't have to be right, just tell us what they are. It's a crystal ball, and we need to talk about where this airport fund is going to be, because I'm going to make a bold statement that I've made before. We're going to find a way to fund the Senate. We've told them. But we need to know how we're going to fund it. The city made a commitment to them, and we need to follow up on our commitment. Now, we know $4 million isn't coming out of water. We know $2 million isn't coming out of sanitation. I don't know how much can come out of general. That's the other one we need to see. So we need to know where all this money is going to come from to fund that operation. So we don't think it's going to be $6.5 million out of the airport. Well, it looks like. But if you do take $6.5 million out of the airport, we got nothing.
Roll up the sidewalk.
Well, and it would be easier to fund if there's not a deadline on it, that we have to have it done by June 30th. I mean, we have other options out there of things that we need to do that we don't know. And the reason it wasn't done was because the time frame when we were told we were doing this was so short, we couldn't do some of the other options. We couldn't do loans. We couldn't do some of it because it was enough time to get those in place. A year and 2 months later, we're still in the same place we were when I started talking about this. And it's like, man, we would have had time to do that if we had known.
And that's what we got.
And there's a whole lot of unknowns still with that project. So, I mean, we're kind of, I feel like we're stuck in the mud. We're not getting much movement.
Well, I just want to make sure, Mr. Chair, that we have the ability.
Oh, I understand. I found it, yeah.
I know it's stuck,
Yeah.
but I want to see, do we have the ability?
It-
If
It's probably
it's stuck, it's not our
stuck.
fault. This is not going to be the city of Roswell's fault. We're going to get there.
Well, it's actually good for us that it is stuck, as long as we recognize that the payable is coming. And hopefully we'll have enough time to fix it. Because I haven't figured it out yet. I'm working on it. but I
Well, that's,
haven't figured it out.
Jane's going to put us in the first step.
She and I have had several discussions about this.
Yes, we have. And I'm sure he's tired of listening to me on it too.
No, because I ain't got it figured out yet. It's hard to get it figured out.
We will figure it
So,
At least you sound better this week than last week.
feel better too.
Well, he was not in good shape last week.
out. Okay, sorry about that.
So to go to the next one is going to be the airport EFC fund.
Yeah.
You'll hit a balance sheet first. Right there. Right there. We've collected 30.49 of the budgeted revenue, and at this point, I don't think there's any anticipated expenditures out of this fund. We didn't budget anything out of it. Go down to the UDAG. We've got $1,015,468 sitting in UDAG. That would have been part of the money used as a transfer into the Air Center to cover the Ascent project.
So have these UDAC funds been utilized in the last several years?
It's been over 8 years, long time ago. The program has already ceased to exist. So pretty much we reached out to kind of get these funds released. And that's why we changed the resolution where it could be used for airport center capital improvements. This is the capital improvements. We need it as our revenue source for this fund.
And but we've not transferred anything yet.
So we have another minute.
Let's not spend it either.
This can be used for capital improvements. For TSA improvements.
Mhm. Good.
So I mean, it's gonna be a big knock when it comes.
No, I know.
We have, that's when we look at what we have available. What this end project is, what the TSA is, what's the one.
Well, and you've got a budget adjustment that you're going to see on Thursday where we're adding some money in just so we can see it out there in budget, so we don't forget about it, or that we don't mix it up. So there's going to be several items on this budget adjustment, and it's strictly adding pretty much revenue coming into the road fund, because Lewis is having problems functioning within his budget, with us not having everything budgeted that he's doing. So we put those in there. And then the 5 million from the governor, we are asking to add to the budget too, so we can see everything that we know of.
Have we got any money on the bridge situation yet? Do we see that yet?
No, but that's one of them we're adding. The $1,000,007 is part of the resolution for Thursday.
We got to tidy up our ship a little bit. We got to know not only what potential revenues are out there, regardless of what streams are attached. But we need to know about some pending bills that are coming that we don't have listed. That's the why you use the POs, so you know it's coming.
Yep.
The bridge just sits there. The bridge just doesn't work to get the money. How many months is that?
Well, it's,
Did your bank have that?
the check's in the mail, Riker.
You got to spend it for, we'll give it to you.
I want to make sure that it's in the mail before I cut the check. Spend it. You know, I mean, it's a delicate balancing act.
Yes.
Just, Councilor, I think you pointed out that, so when we were looking at the airport fund, the 6.8, this million is not there yet. So we haven't transferred. So technically we got 7.
Yeah, so I'd like to see just what the whole thing is.
Right.
Pending transfers and exactly where they're coming from, or whatever it is, so we can just see what that bucket of cash, what it's made of.
And we have some, just so you all know, we have 2 grants out there, FAA grants, that we do get reimbursed for certain expenses. So some of those things can add a little bit back too.
Right.
We just need to make sure we work it.
Yeah, and so, but I think we need to have a clear picture of what those are, as well, look at this whole thing, even though you don't have them, you know, and you've already expensed them, so.
If he's an optimistic person, I'm not.
Yeah. There's a balance between that too, which is good to have as well.
Yin and yang, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He'll come in and say, but, and it's like, no.
Show me.
Because yes, there's $1 million there, but the transfer for indirect cost is more than that, so.
Right.
Giving you that.
So we're through the UDEC. Now we're at solid waste. Net income for the first quarter, 694,079.45. Total revenues at 137.34%. Woo-hoo. That's why they came. Expenses are at 21.56%. Transfers in from the ARPA for the Utility Assistance Program total 298,044.48 for the bills that were covered. And again, transfers are considered part of revenue. And any revenue for the indirect cost of the ASCENT project has not been done. Outstanding POs total 192,253.10. You have anything you want to add or?
You know, a lot of those, outside deals are environmental that are due throughout the year. Some of them, they're doing specific.
So what was there in
Pardon me?
the indirects would have been?
The indirect would have been. $1,148,095
For the year?
for the year.
Right, 400,000.
Yeah,
So what that done?
and then they had a net revenue of, or net income of 694,000.
So they are been positive for 240.
Yep.
Okay. And you wanted a rating?
Yes, sir.
The landfill net income is 80,214.65. We did do a transfer from solid waste to the landfill to cover the landfill's negative cash balance. It was 111,821.55. So the revenue sits at 18.93 and expenses at 20.63. Third GRT is down 72,000, 4.82%, 72,253.91.
What would cause that?
In part, I think a difference in how we are allocating it, because for this fiscal year, we went back and actually pulled the ordinances and did the exact percentages that were on there. And I think there at one time was some kind of a split between capital improvements, roads and environmental. And I don't know that the allocations were done quite right.
This puts it where it should be. Which
Yeah,
is-
because it's its own ordinance.
So she corrected it.
Sorry.
Not the first time it's been wrong.
Outstanding POs for the landfill are 406,678.20.
Include the draft income.
Then we could add the cash. You got the insurance money. The definitely reimbursed.
Yeah,
Aaron, we'll just ask you a question. What would your landfill fees have been? First quarter, any idea what that number would have been?
Everything's current. So landfill fees have always been current. Those have always been, we've always. We've always got.
So that's on track. How about solid waste? What would that have
Any
been?
questions?
Just curious what that number would have been.
yeah, I don't know. I didn't bring, I
Just
didn't
curious. It's water under the bridge.
We have a breakdown for it.
Okay, to the water fund. Net income for the first quarter is. Go to the next page, I think. A little bit farther. Right there. Is 331,419.95. Total revenues at 42.74%. Total expenses are at 15.13%. Transfers in from ARPA, and this is what has made revenue high, is $1,957,352.89 for all the water bills. Transfers out for the smart meter debt service is $387,787.15. There's no indirect cost allocation, and they've got outstanding POs of $4,192,390.22.
And again, my question is if you had the index,
The
because it
direct would have been
was
1.5, 87,592 for the first quarter.
387, 390, so if I take
Three-
3.3 minus the 1.9. you'll have 2.3. 4 plus 3 is going to be about a million.
Yeah, about $1 million.
Million will put that in.
Wastewater net income $678,284.93. Total revenues at 2138. Total expenses are only at 6.55. The transfers for the solid or for the wastewater was 337,154.36 from ARPA. There's no transfer out for the Ascent project, and outstanding POs are 4.1 million on it. So water in total has $8 million in outstanding purchase orders, 8.2 million.
Again, there was no indirects on those.
No, they don't, it's all in
It's
water.
all in one. And so wastewater, and have we not done with our pop? 300,000.
Yep.
Let me ask you, I know we've talked about this before, Mr. Fuentes, what are we waiting for on reimbursements on water plant? When we had all those emergencies and we're supposed to get some funding back to us.
The only, right now, the water fund has that, water fund, it's mainly on the wastewater where they have the dewatering project. On the water side, not,
Well, you remember when we had this discussion about where the $4 million went? That what we thought was going to be there, and you said we had all these emergencies, and at that time, you also said
like last year,
there was going to be some reimbursements coming through, I guess, from the state or whomever. It wasn't clear to me where those were going to come from. But where do we sit on those reimbursements that we got coming back to us?
we'll have to look at that. One reimbursement, for example, is the Edgewood water one that we get for the school. That one's coming back to the city.
Yeah, I think we'd like to see what do we have coming back? Even though we don't have it, what do we actually apply for when we got coming back?
Have you ever hooked up to Edgewood stuff on it? Or about this?
We had an Edgewood water project too.
Yeah.
And we had
No, I remember.
I guess he was not finished.
for the mountain, for the Edgewood, it's just the Edgewood area. We do have some,
I think we have some grant as well.
grant coming back. But the actions in the 1.2 million, is just our money.
But it was commonly we had reimbursements coming back. Remember that? And so we need to know what those are so that you get a true picture of what's even over catch basis, which is those.
And then do we capture all of those, the water project grants as well?
None of it was DOT.
Okay. And then we'll update that. Amanda's tracking a lot of the grants that we have out there, trying to capture how much of that has been reimbursed and spent.
just need to know what the outstanding is.
Okay.
I think that's what we need to know.
And then my last section talks about the projects or the debt service funds for the water and the wastewater funds. We've got the 2014.
I don't know what page I'm on, but I'm on fund number 925100. And it's transfer out to the air center of $3 million from the wastewater income. That's the lease on those wells. Is that water rights out there? Is that what it is?
The $3 million out of wastewater to the airport has got to be a cent.
Because the transfer for the water rights is like 500.
Yeah.
3.1 is
Well,
the
that's
assessment.
what I thought. So I'm
So
wondering
we
about-
need that transfer.
The transfers out to air center, $3 million. Out of the wastewater treatment. This is the. Okay.
So we go to,
So that 3 million were sent to fix the water line over there.
Okay.
it was just the ascent project. It wasn't to fix the water line because water paid for that water line. And that's already been paid for. Now, when we did budget, water didn't have the money, but wastewater did to cover part of the ascent project. So we changed the funds.
Okay.
So the wastewater treatment plant pump improvement debt service fund payments are due in December and June. The same with the 2014B, payments are due in December and June. The 2017 smart meter bond, nothing but interest is budgeted for the fiscal year in there. And in the debt service, payments are due in December and June. The last portion, go down, keep going, right there. This is the list of all of the open POs by year and by fund, basically. So we have 256,414.41 open for fiscal year 20. In capital improvements, general fund, landfill, and water and sewer. In fiscal year 21, we're carrying $1,953,593.72 in those various funds. 22, we're carrying $13,167,498.83. And then in 23, we have $6,219,248.33. For a grand total of $21 million. They don't here, and it's sort of odd because I worked for the state for 15 years and we went carry over purchase orders like that. So it sort of has been mind-blowing to me.
Just so you know, Councilor, so every year at the end, as we get close to the end of the fiscal year, that's when the finance department starts sending out notices to other departments. They need to start closing PO. Because one of the things we stress to everybody is that number, any amount that's covered in POs, gets added to the budget. It still will impact their budget. It impacts the available resources. So we start closing out, but I know finance this year has been more, insisting on, you gotta get a PO so that we don't end up with the audit finding. And that's why we see a little bit more POs, but we have to start closing them out. Some of them will carry, if it's a project like the watering project, we'll end up carrying. But we've noticed, we've seen some POs that have been here.
Well, and a lot of what they like to do, so it's not an audit finding, and I can appreciate that, is they do this stretch, and I'm gonna use roads because it's easy. They do this stretch of road for $1.2 million, and then they do this next stretch and they just do a change order to that original PO. And so that PO stays open for 2 years. I don't like that.
No, we're gonna fix that. We, PO is PO, stands on itself. Something else comes along, we issue another PO. We zero this one out, because we're supposed to be on cash basis, not on accrual basis, so pushing money down the road is not good. It's not good, because we've got to count for this $21.5 million. Yeah, 21.6. And we don't know where a lot of this stuff is. We got PO, so we don't know where the project is. We don't know if it's past the first block or they got the first 5 miles. We don't know. And Mike, I don't know what it takes, but we need to start, not wait until the end of the fiscal year. Let's get this stuff. Let's figure out where this stuff is and who's dragging their feet and why. If we can't get the material or something, fine, I understand that. But we need to know that. I don't know that now. You don't know that. Nobody in this room knows that. So, he's gone. And this $21 million, that's what we were when we were closing the books.
Well, and I agree, and I think when you look at, say, Jim and his golf carts, as time gets closer, as long as we have a purchase order in place that's dated before that invoice date, it's not a procurement violation. But don't do it July 1st and not know whether you're going to get them in this fiscal year or not, because it ties up that money and it makes it difficult for me to distinguish what truly is going to happen this year and what's not.
It makes it hard on you, but it makes it difficult on the finance committee, because we don't know if this is coming in and when it's coming in. We got to tie up the money, but we may not need to. And, we really need to move a little bit over here, but we can't because it's tied up here. We don't know when this is going to be spent. It just makes the whole thing, but you guys, Mike, figure out, let's see if we can't get some of this. I get it. You got the PO because they placed the order for the golf.
Well, no, they haven't yet, so we haven't done that, so I appreciate that. So
I'll use that as
Jim's been coming back
I'll
and
use that as an
saying,
example. We know they're coming because they're ordered, and we got a PO, and so basically we're gonna pay that bill. It's just like fire trucks we got. Just like we're gonna deal with the police units for the officers we handle next week. I know that PO needs to be issued, and I know those vehicles are somewhere to be here in a timely manner, hopefully. Of course, we don't know, supply disruptions in the automotive. I assume these 5 vehicles.
Those vehicles, yeah.
We got, okay. So should 60, 90
This is asking
days,
for
we'll close that
forgiveness.
sucker out.
This is asking for forgiveness.
I say.
So I'm still learning here. So when somebody needs a PO, are you the only one that didn't give a PO? Can they write their own PO, and how do they inform you that it's a PO?
and they enter it in the system and it comes through some approval processes.
They have to fall within the budget.
Right, and then Jessica Collier, who is my procurement agent, whatever you want to call her, procurement officer. And her name is what goes on there as the signature for every PO, because the state requires it be a centralized purchasing office, that we have control over the money.
So she verifies.
So do we have, go ahead.
But we do have to, there's no way of closing it here. We have one, I can't remember which heavy vehicle that we spent 2 years trying to acquire. And so that PO stayed open, and it was what we sent to the company. That's what we're gonna pay it on that number. If we close it, then we're having to
Renegotiate.
or change it a different number.
We don't want to make
You
it.
got exceptions to the rule.
Right.
I understand that, but there shouldn't be $21.6 million worth of exceptions.
Well, just like we were hearing, we have a contract with the sanitation of this dump. We have a contract with these guys. We have an open PO for them to do their service. They come in and do the service. 200,000 for the whole year. Well, we close that one June 30th. And if we need it for the next year, we open another one. You gotta make sure that those ones are the ones that are being closed and
Well, but we had $21 million where we were trying to close the FY 22 books. And everybody was going, what's this for? And everybody, I mean, nobody could really come up with a good answer. You know that. You were sitting there, we were asking.
but we came up with some of them. I mean, the air conditioners for the museum was one.
Well, and that's important to know. Do we have a paid, I mean, you've got your gal that signs off on the POs. Do we have a procurement officer that's in charge of all this stuff? Is that person?
Yes.
Is she also, before she issues the POs, if we're gonna build striping the street up for the Hot City Hall? And is she the one that gets all the bids and it says this is the one that we're gonna use, or is that done by the engineering department?
It's done by the engineering department, but they have to or submit all of that documentation so she can make sure that they actually did bid it and that it's all the same bid. And that they pick the cheapest one, unless they have a justification on why they picked somebody else. So she gathers all of that and it's in the system.
Okay. All right, so we'll look at some of those. Just put everybody on those. I used to do that a lot when I was at the county. Roll that file, I'll look at it.
Well, and a lot of people like using the credit cards because it's easy. And it's easy to get through, but I told them, if you need something today, if it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, I'll get a purchase order pulled for you, but you've got to do your part, which is give me the dollar amount and the vendor and make sure they are a vendor.
Which brings up another interesting point. Where are we on e-cards? We got everything balanced finally and know what's going on there? That's what we need to get on top of.
Down from like 180 down to I think 89, so we've done good at getting them closed and just sort of educating some of the newer departments, Justin Holcomb over facilities. And I told him, open a purchase order for $5,000 at Home Depot where you can go get the items. And then when you use it at water, then let me know, send us the bill and we'll transfer the money out of water. We'll pay that bill and reimburse you back. So we've got a process in place.
Well, I'm looking at my crystal ball, and we do this at mid-year. This isn't gonna be a one afternoon meeting. And so I'm gonna want some particulars on pay cards and some purchase orders maybe, and we're gonna, right then is when we're gonna have to make some big swings at this thing. Try to cut off some hemorrhaging. Yes, Master.
Mr. Swami, when you asked your crystal ball, why did it take 6 years? We're just paying interest on the smart meter project. Was that long? For 6 years, we've just been paying interest. And we just now.
Well,
They're two-
they pay, I think that they pay an interest, one part of they pay it twice a year.
Well, and that's interest coming in versus, so the one is the interest coming in on the money that we have out there. And the other is the payment and the interest going out. So one is a bond and the other is the debt service. If you look at the next one, they talked about the debt service.
Because those are 20-year bonds. Were they up to 1930 or 2037?
Yeah, 2037.
Was there any reason why we went so long? I have no idea. It's a long time.
This is expensive project.
Don't look at me, I voted no.
Expensive project.
Oh, I actually, you had the crystal ball.
Well, my crystal ball was not tuned in back then. It's tuned in now. Got it on the right side. Anyway, I hope we'll see. Okay, we need, are we done? Okay, we need to see if there's anybody out there that would like to say something. Any questions from the folks that are calling in? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Yep. Anybody here have any questions?
You know,
Okay.
to explain this in a way that makes some sense to me, let me just put in dollars and cents.
Well, we need someone else to explain.
Oh,
If it makes sense, Bobby can do it.
not looking for.
It's pretty well accomplished.
Kind of explain how the outstanding purchase orders work and maybe to explain it in cash or just, I'm trying to look for a way to explain the process here and what the overall
So,
debt now is versus how it's going to look.
The 21 million that DOs, they're budgeted. It's in the budget. It's not like it's outstanding that we're gonna have to suddenly have. It's in our budget.
it's a
And it can come
placeholder.
with several different methods. It can come GRT, it can come grants, it can come.
But it's a placeholder, so we know that we've got that debt coming eventually. We gotta write a check out of the appropriate fund somewhere down the road.
So it's doing this.
That's
Okay.
almost, hopefully we're a little more skilled at that, but
But that's the thing I'm trying, because I know that, you know, this can change. It's changing, it's going to keep changing, especially if you guys take the snapshots every quarter.
yeah. And this is, the stuff we reviewed was current as of June, or excuse me, September 30.
Right. And keep in mind, because it's the beginning of a fiscal year, things are a little slower. Like I said, any federal grants are going to be on a different fiscal year end, which is going to be normally a October 1 to a September 30. So the half year is going to be a much better picture of where everything's at.
That's here's why I said we're not gonna do it. I don't think it's gonna be possible to do a real thorough mid-year in an afternoon meeting. Because we have, this is just kind of a quick snapshot. And at mid-year, we'll be able to really make some assumptions, better assumptions. Correct, Counselor? Mid-year.
I mean, well,
You don't want to use that assumption word earlier, so.
you meant to when you're doing.
But your assumptions are gonna be a little firmer at mid-year than they are right
Well, it's just a bigger snapshot.
Right.
Yeah.
So it covers more. I mean, one of the things I didn't say about the golf was that was our big expense time. We were mowing every week.
now.
We're not mowing now.
Well,
We have other expenses, but also our income comes down. We don't have as much sunshine, we don't have as much.
right,
But there's, it balances out, but
Get halfway through, it should give us a good picture.
yeah, hopefully so.
With so many PMs remaining, I mean, is it even accurate to say, like, animal control, they've got 195,000, is that, because I can't say in the hole, because that isn't really true.
we're not, because we can't operate. There's nothing in the hole. We can't be in the hole.
Yeah, government, you're not supposed to be in the hole.
We're not allowed by
You can
law.
never be, never.
Only the federal.
Only the federal.
They are. Sorry, I'm
Stay
local
on the
government.
print presses.
Sorry.
Well, and that sheet that's up there, where it shows the original PO amounts for 27.4, actually 27.5. And so there's been $6 million round figures that have been closed out. So this machine is moving all the time. You can't put the brakes on it. It's just gonna keep evolving and changing, and things happen that on a day-to-day basis, the city manager got to make a decision. We didn't foresee, our crystal ball didn't see that, and it's got to be done, or this neighborhood's not gonna have water for sewer or whatever. So it's an emergency, and so you just gotta go scramble and get that done.
But then as long as I do it in a sensible way, I can say at this point, there are a lot of outstanding POs like animal control, $195,000.
But,
Parks, almost $250,000.
yeah, but some of these expenses, POs, like the jail, is a way that we use to account. We know that this bill is gonna come due to the county to have our municipal inmates. And so some people think that PO, a purchase order for one of the vehicles for the police department, for instance, is a little different than some of the POs because they're just a placeholder. And when that vehicle gets here, and we got a PO, we're told that they're ours. When they show up, then we got the check. So that's about as straightforward as you can do a PO. And some of these other POs that you heard about today are placeholders, because we know throughout the year, we're gonna get billed back against that PO. And those are not the ones that I'm most concerned about. What I'm concerned about is, for instance, Main Street, when it was getting, this is just for instance. So I started on one end of town and they went all the way through. Does ever block a different PO or an add-on to a PO, or, I mean, those are the things that can happen to you. And sometimes that occurs. They find a place where, whenever they were doing Atkinson and the plumbing was all messed up. Well, we had to stop and do another PO, take care of those valves, and then nobody had them. I guess they had to make them, and they wouldn't figure out how to get them here. So it's just a moving target. You just do the best you can with what you got.
I mean, you guys, let's see if you compare before you saw the results versus now, are you feeling a little more, how are you feeling now? I mean, I hate to put it that way, I hate to feel. What's, is it worse, better? Just content knowing that maybe you have some, at least a little bit of
I
information.
don't feel any worse about it. I'm trying to keep up with this stuff on a monthly basis, and I talk to the voices and this thing is quite a bit, and
It's down.
I think, I mean, I'm working, as chair of the finance committee, I'm working hard to get a handle on it. So I'm not surprised. Am I totally comfortable? No.
Well, and I think another big point is that, when, as a whole for the city, we're looking at about $6 million more in GRT than what we even budgeted. So $6 million more in gross receipts than what we have budgeted. So that's going to help a lot of what we talked about today. It hasn't come in, but it's right now, a quarter in. We're already up.
What?
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
So with that being said, you said the general fund or GRT is up 4%, which on the quarter is 1.1. But then you go over here and our estimated shortfall on an annual basis is 3.6. So.
On one.
Well, the 70-30 split in recreation. On an annual basis, we're saying that we're going to be short $3.6 million. So if I take the GRT at 1.1, which will now make that 4.6, minus the 3.6, even though our GRT looks good, if it goes the way it gets spread out, we're only $1 million up. So it may sound like it's 6 million, but it's not 6 million. So that's what you have to look at. You just can't look and say, well, we're up 6 million on our GRT.
Well, but I didn't want her to walk away from here and think that everything was doom and gloom with me either.
Yeah.
That's
I think that's how she felt.
Now, I just want to get a little perspective, is all, and see.
We're okay. What she's telling us right now is our GRT is going to be more than our expenses by over $1 million. Right now, looking at it today.
Okay,
That could
it
change.
is out, yeah, because it could change.
That could change at the end of 6 months. But we projected that in GRT, in short revenue.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good thing.
But you know, right at the end of last year, when it was a $3 million or something spent on water in the last month or whatever. I mean, that was not unpredictable.
But that's coming out of the way.
Yeah. but it's-
Well, and I think if you look at the water fund and just what the water is up from us doing the shut-offs and returning back to normal, it's getting them. And that's only gonna go up for them. So I think we're gonna build back up all of that cash that we had to spend last year on the emergencies.
Well,
And the other thing is, you're required by law to have 112 reserve. We have 312, which we worked for years to get. The last 10 years that I've been, since 2010, we've been at 112, we got 212s, we got bumped back down to 112, and now we're at 312. So we have 2 extra months of expense for the city on the back. Plus, we have 7.3 million in the CARES, that we got 7 million because 300 is designated, but we still can use it throughout it. That we have to spend by December 6th, December 26th.
The 7 million you can spend whenever.
We can
because
spend
were-
it whenever, but we have to have spent it by.
We can keep it for 10 years because
We
we
can.
converted that
We
to
converted
revenue,
it.
to lost revenue. So
Okay.
that money's already taken care of.
Okay.
It's only that portion.
295 that we have. Okay, well, cool. That was what had worried me too,
Yeah.
is that we know there's and we say we converted it, but if it gets out there, it's amazing how they can claw back, what they can claw back. And we might, I mean, the state's clawed back stuff that even that was actually designated for funds and supposedly was tied up, but it was pulled back.
We're down baseball, field
I'll have Pioneer return that request.
have what?
I had a question on solid waste, but I think that Abraham is gone. I just can't understand why they have $365,000 for the first quarter and they haven't spent a dime. So I guess they don't need fuel or hydraulic fuel or I don't understand that, and janitorial supplies. I mean, did they not turn in their revenue? Am I not seeing where they have the budget, what's available, and they haven't spent anything? It's page 115.
My copy, whatever, remember. I have to early copy of it. That's right. I've got a microphone.
I'm just curious. You gave them kudos for getting a lot of money, but I see 2 things that haven't been spent.
So what
Is it an open deal? Thank you, Gary. Well,
Well, see there, on their, is that your expense line there? They're showing 27% of their money spent.
no,
Right.
I'm seeing 0 on page 115.
What is your line number?
My, you mean my numbers?
Account number
I
on
have
it.
no idea.
This number over here.
Oh,
are you talking about?
723200.
Supplies, fuels, and fluids.
Yes, and then 2 more down, janitorial supplies.
And what is that column, the budget?
I'm just asking, don't they spend it or haven't they turned anything in on their PO yet on this?
Well, what I see is they didn't do anything in July 2020. They may have changed this account,
Okay,
but I don't know why there's an available budget for it.
okay.
But
Well-
seeing that we have 4 blanks.
Yeah, and it could be slow invoices coming in.
Do they have fuel in the other company?
But they
I'm sure
take
they
their
have
fuel, they now fuel in town, certain places from what I'm told. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if they just didn't get their
Well, that would be-
payments.
Ideas.
So our fuel and our janitorial supplies, we are taking out of our sanitation line first. So we're paying everything out of sanitation first for the first half of the year. And the second half of the year, once that's expended, we'll take it out of landfill. That's what's going on.
All that means.
Yeah, and now that you say.
Well, their expenses, if you look at the bottom of that, is 27% overall.
Right, but I'm just curious about the fuel and the fuel.
It's getting spent, it's just not out of the line item you're looking at it, seems like.
It's a different line item now.
Yeah.
It's
We
a
got,
different fund.
It's a different fund.
Yeah, she's saying landfill.
Right, but this, it's showing solid waste for the, almost 360,000.
So what does landfill look like for the same line item?
Didn't she just say they took it for first half of the year out of one and then the second half?
Right, so it must be out of the landfill money then out of.
They did the landfill first.
Yeah, there's 7,000 out of fuel, out of landfill first.
Okay.
you got anything else? That would read us that for question. That's all you're allowed today, is one question.
Okay.
I give you everything I've got.
These are the potential numbers of potential annual, and this is the potential short annual.
She's asking about the first, second page summary. She, general fund, the first 9 items that you have listed there, goes under the 1.239.
That's the annual, right?
On the second page.
That's the second page. Projected short budget.
That's annualized for those departments.
So you're correct. That's what the crystal ball says today.
That's fine.
Mid-year, those may change because some of the things that change here is if
And
somebody,
like I said, most of that's based on payroll, so if an employee drops off for 2 months, then
well,
that's
then
gonna
we get,
fix that.
then we run into another side called payroll vacancy savings.
Yeah.
And then one last one.
Chuck, you're tough to live with.
What is the time of year here that is the best usually? We gone through it already? This period?
Summertime is generally better revenue. Of course, we're fixing to get into one. We get peak around Christmas time. Do you have those sheets? Sheet or the CRT? Okay.
So that's not,
Yeah,
it's a 3-month lag.
yeah, so now you get, yeah, it'd be April before we see whatever.
He's got
Ninety days. Yeah, because everybody says the gross receipts to Santa Fe, and Santa Fe just gets our part back. It takes a while to do.
This is in a different, but this is on December 1st.
At least one. They deemed it as a program.
That's on
December word.
We're trying to sample up in that. What?
So you're looking at the money that we're receiving for this month for actual expenditures. 90 days. I understand that's in all these spreadsheets.
Yeah, the trend. There you can see it that one, but I can't see it that well now. That's probably what I
A
need.
lot of numbers, a lot of numbers.
Yeah, and it was duplex, so it's sort of smudgy.
Well, you just tried, I mean, it's like, you can't make it like that. Not possible.
So. Is he scared?
I think I got it. I can call you tomorrow. You prefer morning or afternoon? Morning, okay. Thank you very much. This was interesting, but it's still, the wheel is still going and it's gonna go for a while. This is the first time I've done a budget here, and it's funny, every state where I've worked, they're different. Yeah.
So is Juno out or?
Juno's in Silver State.
Yeah,
Yeah, she lives in Silver City.
Her mom lives there.
So you're gonna be out.
She was just like out either when it's closed. She had to drive out there some weekends, she's getting tired, it's 4 hours each way.
It's 5.5. There's no-
Yeah, there's no easy way to get there. You gotta go through dimming it up, or you go, and actually go around that real windy.
Yeah, that real wine road.
And what's hard
Yeah, 'cause she sent me a picture
for
of that
me,
sign.
and you, everybody, is we're taking it out of this for the first time. Both joint funds,
My boss
but
said,
you
we'll
got,
take a picture of
you
it,
got
and
to
then
keep it separate.
went out and buying a few signs. No, I only saw the one. The ones on Seymour, right? And that was one I didn't see, and I asked him, I said, these signs are the same, right? It's
Well,
not like this, like
we don't-
man
we
on the
don't
other side,
have
but I see it's even more of a man.
Yes, you'd like to use the sign order.
They're very soft.
Well, they're gonna be up soon anyway, they're already new craft and leather.
Yeah, somebody I guess thought I was your secretary. Let me have a good question.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Chair. Okay.
do we, is the meeting still going?
No, we're done.
Okay.
We can stop it. All of us got it. Straight, that's what- business.